No. You'll be back later.
Oh, yeah.
You'll always be back.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. We're going to be doing a sloth encounter here. Sorry about that. Looks like Flash kind of moved around. But we'll be starting this here in just a minute.
I did.
Hey, when we have 4 VIPs, do they all go into the cover cabin once? Kevin's gonna be in the other one. We could, on the second set of 2, we could stagger those 2. Or we could do. And nobody here's the witness protection, running from your ex, running from the loft. If we live stream pretty much everything, you guys are all okay with that? All right, great. Come on in. Well, your wife answered, and that's the same thing.
Oh, you got me there.
People ask me, do I own the place? I'm like, no, my wife does.
Oh, very cool.
She lets me hang around most of the time. It gets crazy hot in here, so if you guys want to peel an outside layer, you're welcome to. And yeah, there you go. We're not a naturalist colony, but
It's the colony, man.
yeah. All right. So let me get his food ready. So this is Flash. Flash is a two-toed sloth.
Oh, Flash.
Alive in the world today, there are two-toed sloths and three-toed sloths. There are some basic differences between them. We're going to talk
That's my
about those
ancestor,
here in a
man.
minute. Say what?
My ancestor.
His spirit animal.
Oh yeah, all right.
She calls me her sloth.
That's it. Where y'all in from today?
Georgia. Mount Georgia.
Mount, what, Georgia?
LJ.
LJ, okay.
Water blue.
We're just about 10 minutes down the road.
Nice.
Very cool.
We love it when our locals come. So in this calendar year, we've had people here from 37 states and 15 countries,
Oh, wow.
and our locals just don't come. And I never quite understand why that is. But
Apparently, a lot
Kevin
of people
has-
don't know this exists.
Kevin is our social media guy here, and he is directly addressing the nobody knows that we're here thing.
Yeah.
And people are beginning to know.
Yes.
He's the reason I found you guys. So
Yeah, did you
thank
guys see us on TikTok,
Yes.
Facebook?
Absolutely.
Which one?
TikTok.
TikTok.
If I could put you on social, they'd blow you guys up, man. I'm so strong on there with people.
Oh, are you?
I'm over 5,000 strong.
Yeah, we're about 80.
That's just me though. I'm just somebody that speaks.
Yeah, what do you speak about?
Anything that makes me mad.
Makes you mad? Why don't you speak about
It's
what
called-
makes you joyful?
Nah. Because that's a lie.
That's what?
That's a lie.
Oh, I got joy in my heart, man.
I'm just kidding. No, I got No, this is a rant and rave one. That's all. It just gives people the chance to vent.
Yeah.
Because you get laughter after you hang up from it, you laugh your butt off about it. Look at it, that's what happened.
All right, guys, this is Flash's breakfast, and here are the rules of the game. So Flash has horrible vision. We'll talk more about that later. He literally cannot see the difference between this and this. So you put this one in his mouth, and you don't put this one in his mouth. And you feed him his food just like that. And when you pet Flash, he likes to just be stroked like this. He doesn't like to be scratched. He doesn't like to be rubbed. He doesn't like you to touch his belly side. And don't stick your fingers in his mouth. That's pretty much all the rules of the game. You are welcome to stand next to Flash. Hey buddy, come here.
How about pictures with no flash?
All the pictures you want, video if you feel like it. You can download TikTok and stuff later if you want to. Kevin usually puts up a shorter version of the TikTok. And you're welcome to stand approximately this close to Flash to take your pictures. You can stand on both sides of them, so one can stand on one side, one can stand on the other side. You guys are welcome to be each other's photographers so you can get better pictures with your couples, pairs, however you want to deem that. And I am going to teach you some things about a sloth that unless you're some sort of an expert, you likely don't know. So, sloths are slow. Sloths are famously slow, but sloths are slow in ways that you don't think about an animal being slow. Oh, starting off, two-toed sloths, three-toed sloths. So all sloths have 3 toes on their back feet. Two-toed sloths have 2 on the front feet, like this. Three-toed sloths have 3 on the front feet. Their last bone of their finger is inside of their claw right there. You wouldn't want to go trimming a sloth's claws without knowing what you're doing. You can cut his bone off. The two-toed sloths and three-toed sloths. A three-toed sloth has more vertebrae in their cervical spine between their skull and their shoulders, and they have 3 vertebrae of a tail. But they have the same number of vertebrae from end to end. So the two-toed sloth has fewer in their cervical spine from their head to their shoulders, and they have no tail. So he's got more from his hips to his shoulders. So a three-toed sloth, Park City, I love that place. A three-toed sloth is going to turn its head 270 around like an owl like this. The two-toed turns his head less, but he turns his whole body like a slinky like this. So if you take a piece of food and you drag him around in a circle like that, just make him follow you around in a circle, you will see that he will turn his shoulders nearly 180 out from his hips because he is more slinky-like. The gotta move slow because he is slow.
Oh, that's so
That's
So
cool.
if you keep on turning, he will keep on turning even more than that. So the two-toed sloths are a little bit quicker than a three-toed sloth, but to describe a two-toed sloth as quicker than any other mammal, you can only be talking about a three-toed sloth, because together they are collectively the slowest mammals in the world. The sloths are slow, not only in their movement, they're slow in their digestion, their metabolic processes, their metabolism. They are slow in every way that an animal can be slow. So slow in their digestion. A sloth eats a crazy, ridiculous amount of food, but they digest it super slowly. So the sloth eats 10% of its body weight every single day. That's sort of a, whatever number until you think about it in human characteristics. I weigh 180 pounds, at least I did before I went on vacation last week. So 10% of my body weight is rolling up into Outback and saying, give me 18 of the 16-ounce porterhouses and plowing those down every single day. That is a crazy, ridiculous amount of food. The sloth eats that every single day. When the sloth goes to the bathroom, which he does only 3 or 4 times a month, once in 7 to 10 days, when the sloth goes to the bathroom, he loses 1/3 of his body mass when he goes to the bathroom.
That's like me.
Again, that's a ho-hum kind of number, but I doubt it. So I again weigh 180, so for me to eliminate 1/3 of my natural body mass, we'd be talking about 60 pounds.
Yeah, that's about me.
So dropping off a bag of dog food in a 5-pound bucket all at one time. Plumbing systems of America would have to change. So he goes to the bathroom only once in 7 to 10 days. When he is in the tops of the trees, he is entirely safe from predators with the exception of eagles. When he's in the tops of the trees, the reason he's safe from predators is he's really light. And so he can go much further out to the end of the branches than a predator big enough to threaten his life can go. If the predator pressed the issue to the point that the branch broke and they both fell all the way to the ground, the sloth, being very much like a slinky and a pretty durable animal, can withstand an 80 to 100 foot drop from the canopy to the floor of the rainforest, obviously not on concrete. And the cat will not survive it, and the sloth will look over at the cat and go, ah.
That was dumb.
Ah. And back up the tree he will go, in no particular hurry or rate of speed. But anyway, this sloth will survive the drop and the cat will not. So the thing that can get to him in the tops of the trees is an eagle. That's his only natural predator in the tops of the trees. In the wild, they say that a sloth probably lives somewhere in the 20-year range. Nobody really knows exactly. But the normal cause of death for a sloth in the wild is being caught by a jaguar when he comes down the tree to go to the bathroom. So it makes no sense for him to come down the tree to go to the bathroom, right? He ought to just let her rip from up top where he's safe. What does he care where his poop lands, right?
Drop it on their head.
Yeah, exactly. Drop it like it's hot. Drop it like it's hot.
That's
So,
where mine went.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You a Snoop Dogg fan?
Drop it like it's hot.
Come back.
So, anyhow, lost my train. Chemo brain, what can you do? So, he ought not to come down the trees. So what is the good reason why a sloth comes down the trees? The sloth-moth symbiotic relationship. Symbiotic meaning beneficial to both sides of the equation, where parasitic would be beneficial to one side, neutral or harmful to the other side. And the sloth and the moth are both benefited by this relationship. So a sloth has somewhere between, depending on what resource you believe, 150 to 600 moths and beetles living in his fur at any given time in the wild. Not here, praise the Lord. So in the wild, The reason that the sloth comes down the tree is when he comes down the tree, he gets his hiney right to the ground and lets it rip right there on the ground, right? The three-toed sloth uses that three vertebra of a tail to actually sit there and dig a little hole in the middle of his poop pile. And that lets the three-toed sloth have even more moth on him than the two-toed. So when they come down the tree and they get their hiney right to the ground, if you wanted to see how a sloth goes poop, you could scroll back through our Facebook videos and see the one that says sloth potty time. And the reason they get all the way down there is when they get to the bottom, the oldest moths jump off of the sloth into the waste pile. They lay their eggs in the waste pile. And then it's row, row, row your boat. So every time that he comes down, every week or 10 days, there's something going on with the moths. So he comes down this time, the moths lay their eggs in the poop pile. The ones from 2 times ago, or the ones from 1 time ago are now larvae. The ones from 2 times ago are now moths. The newest moths fly up onto the sloth. They live their entire life on the sloth. In the case of the three-toed sloth that digs the hole with his tail in the poop, that lets not only the moths fly up, but it lets the larvae crawl up onto the three-toed sloth. The two-toed doesn't get that intimate with his pile that the larvae can crawl up, only the moths can fly up. So the moths are more dense on a three-toed sloth than on a two-toed sloth. But anyhow, the benefit to the sloth is that the sloth digests his food at the end of the day by a bacterial process. Now he has the same chewing actions as us. He has the same mechanical motions of the stomach, the same stomach acids. Actually, his stomach does a whole lot more to his food than ours does, because his food is going to be in there for a long time in a multi-chambered stomach. His esophagus does go down and all the way around his stomach before it goes into his stomach. And then his stomach has a number of chambers inside of it. So, but at the end of the day, we just digest our food to the point of absorbable into our bloodstream by an enzymatic process. The sloth does it by a bacterial process. We also have helpful gut bacteria in our guts, but it's less important to us than it is to the sloth. We have a gut bacteria that will remain in our guts for all of our lives, unless we do one thing, and that one thing is long course antibiotics. If we take a long course of antibiotics, it will kill our gut bacteria the way it kills every other bacteria in our bodies. And maybe that Diet Coke would do it too. It's a squirrel. So anyway, the sloth, his bacteria will last in his gut unless he gets too cold. For us, if we need to replenish our bacteria colony, we go to GNC, we get some live culture probiotics, and we're good to go. Or we could eat some natural Greek yogurt. That would also do the job. The sloth has no access to yogurt, and he has no access to GNC in the rainforest.
That's what
So,
Daddy for breakfast.
Greek yogurt, probably a healthy dude. So I just came back from Turkey, and in Turkey they eat a lot of yogurt and fruit and nuts, and they don't eat oatmeal. They just put all the stuff into the yogurt and stir it up, and you're good to go.
That is from the
And they-
Mediterranean beans.
Oh yeah. Well, they also have about 20 different kinds of olives out on the breakfast buffet. I'm not an Oliver eater. I don't think.
breakfast?
Breakfast, lunch, dinner, all of it. And
Cinnamon.
tons of cheese.
Oh,
I can do cheese.
So-
All of this is a different
It
story.
ain't easy being cheesy.
Yeah. Well, there'll be a dozen kinds of cheese on the breakfast buffet. Anyway, we're here to talk about sloths, not cheese. So anyhow.
Sloths like cheese?
No, sloths do not eat cheese. They don't eat any kind of dairy. The only meat they would normally eat in the wild is the sloth, those moths. So they do lick up a certain. So anyway, the bacteria that replenishes his bacteria colony if he gets cold is the moths. The sloth licks up a certain amount of the waste of the moths and a certain amount of the moths themselves. That is where he gets his bacteria colony from. So the benefit to the
You're so
moth
nice.
is that the sloth is the food source. The moss and algae in the sloth's fur are the food source for the
It
moths.
looks like you
And the
were
bacteria from the moths is where he gets his bacteria colony from that helps him to digest his food to the point of digestible. So it is a true statement of fact that in the wild a sloth cannot exist without moths and a moth cannot exist without sloths. There is a type of moth called a sloth moth that exists nowhere except in fur or in the waste pile of a sloth. This is not true in captivity. In captivity, this sloth is never allowed to get cold. If the sloth got cold, it would kill him because it would kill his bacteria colony that's all the way through his stomach, and that would mean that he would have no way to digest his food, and a month after he got too cold, he would die of starvation with his stomach all the way full of food because he wouldn't be able to absorb it. There are a number of other things you need to know if you're going to keep a sloth, but you know that's not really the point of this discussion. So
I want one.
yeah, well, save your money for a long time, get a USDA license, build yourself a sloth enclosure, and you are good to go.
Or we can just
So
come here.
yeah, or you can just come
You know.
in, yeah. And so anyhow, and the other sloth is going to be moving in here on Monday. It's her birthday on Monday. We'll be
It's
having.
his birthday.
Yeah, we'll be. I'm not sure what kind of a little birthday party we're gonna have on TikTok on Monday for Zoe's birthday, but her birthday is Monday, so online audience,
Other
tune
side.
in Monday. Don't put your hand on his stomach side. So the sloth moth genuinely doesn't live anywhere except in the fur and in the waste pile of the sloth. The other benefit to the sloth is that the moss and algae that are in the sloth's fur are fertilized by the waste of the moths. And the greener and browner and more nasty and ugly looking a sloth is in the wild, the better disguised it is from eagles, which are the only thing that can get to it in the tops of the trees. These days, the biggest threat to moth sloths in the wild is environment. So, you know, their environment is being destroyed at an alarming rate, and they are getting into power lines more and more and more. And, you know, when they go along one power line, it's all good, but when they reach to a second one, you know, fried sloth. So we are interested in sloth conservation here, and really the biggest thing that we as Americans can do to help sloth conservation is pay more attention to how much we waste and how much we throw away that doesn't have to be thrown away. Reduce, reuse, recycle, repurpose, and try to save the rainforest, right?
Heck yeah, man.
So anyhow, sloths slow in their digestion, slow in their metabolism. So a sloth eats really crappy food in the wild. He eats leaves almost exclusively. He'll eat fruits and, you know, whatever kind of veggie sort of things he can ever find, but leaves are the vast majority of his diet. Leaves are almost all cellulose. Cellulose is hard to digest and doesn't have much energy in it. So it takes him 30 days to digest. He digests the food very thoroughly, but there's not a lot of energy in it. So if he goes to the bathroom only once in 10 days and he eats 10% of his body weight every day, and he doesn't tinkle in between either, it's solid and liquid at the same time. So if he eats 10% of his body weight every day and he goes to the bathroom only once in 10 days, that means he has eaten 100% of his body weight since he last went to the bathroom, right? So that means that when he eliminates, it seems like he ought to eliminate something equal to himself. But he doesn't. He eliminates 1/3 of his body weight, so that means that 2/3 of it was actually metabolized. But it's really low energy food, so the sloth, his metabolism is slow and his energy budget is really, really low. So that means that a sloth doesn't move quickly, it doesn't do anything quickly, and also it cannot feed its babies with milk for a very long time. So even in the wild, a sloth can only feed its own babies with milk for somewhere between 3 and 6 weeks. The babies will remain with the mother for longer than that after they have stopped drinking milk from their mother, but they are only being nourished with milk for 3 to 6 weeks. After that, the mother's job, while she stays with the baby, is to teach it how to survive in the world. So sloths eat the leaves from the ends of the branches, not from the base of the tree. And the mother sloth is teaching its baby which leaves to eat, which leaves to not eat. The reason they eat the leaves at the ends of the branches is they're the newest, they're the freshest, and so they don't have as much time to build up any potential toxins or poisons in the leaves. And the cell walls of the cellulose get harder, firmer, thicker over time. So the newest leaves are easier to digest and provide more nourishment than the older leaves. So that's what the mother sloth is doing, is teaching the baby how to survive in the world, even after it's done being nursed with milk. So the sloth can hang from a tree for days and days and days, right? And the reason for that if we were to be wanting to hang from this branch, doing a 2-arm hang, we can remember from a PE class maybe that a minute is a long time to do a 2-arm hang. And a sloth can hang there for days, right? And the reason for that is for a sloth, its exertion state is this. Extension is its exertion state. Contraction is its relaxed state. For us, this is our exertion state. This is exerting energy. Our relaxed state is this. So he's the opposite. So when he's hanging from the branch by this, like this, he's exerting no energy at all to keep his hands, claws, feet, whatever, closed over that branch. It is so true that he is exerting no energy to hang there, that if the sloth died, he would not necessarily fall out of the tree. He could continue to hang there dead until something rotted or until something knocked him out of the tree, because he is exerting no energy at all. So slowing their metabolic processes. So Zoe is going to turn 1 on Monday. She currently weighs 8 pounds. She came here at 3.5 months. She weighed 1.5 pounds. So it has taken her a full year, and she's nowhere near her full adult size yet. But so they grow really slowly. In the wild, they tell you that a sloth is going to live something in the 20-year range, and in captivity they live much, much longer than that. They are prey animals, not predator animals. So in the wild, a sloth is not ever going to die of old age. It's going to die of being caught by a predator, or loss of environment, shocked by a power line, hit by a car. He's 6, and different things like that. Which in captivity, none of those things are a threat to him. So in captivity, no one can tell you how old a sloth can get. I can tell you that the 2 sloth breeders that I'm familiar with each have female sloths that are over 35 years old and still reproductive.
Wow.
Most mammals, of course you can't definitively say that this is true of sloths, but most mammals do not reproduce in the last third to half of their life. So that would seem to indicate that the sloths can live to be at least 70. And but the only thing you can say for sure is that there is one sloth that has been continuously captive for 51 years. It's over in Germany. It shows no signs of old age at this point, and it's 51 years continuously captive. So safe to say that in captivity, sloths can get crazy old, but there's no real data on exactly how old they can get. A few physical characteristics of the sloth that we haven't talked about yet. You can see his teeth. His teeth are big and sharp. He has no enamel on his teeth, so his teeth grow throughout his life like a rodent's teeth do. For a rodent, it's their 2 canine teeth. Their 2 buck teeth. For a sloth, it's their canine teeth. So as they grow throughout their life, they're sharpening against each other like this every time it opens and closes its mouth, and that's how they wear down. And since he's going to live 20 plus years in the rainforest and he doesn't have a toothbrush, that's a very good thing for him. So the sloth's teeth will grow throughout his life. His nose is always wet. If you see a sloth with a dry nose, kind of like your dog, if his nose is dry, there's something the matter. His eyes, he has a situation with his eyes called rod monochromacy. Rod monochromacy means he has all rod cells, no cone cells. So he has no color vision ever. He sees in grayscale all the time, and his vision is horrible. In the daytime, his vision is worse than it is in the nighttime. If you look at his eyes right now, his pupils are just like little pinpricks, so he's kind of looking around like this, But even at nighttime, his vision is still terrible. He's working primarily off of his sense of hearing and smell. So for better or worse, the sloth knows what I sound like, and he knows what I smell like. I just had a vacation, and that is the longest I've been away from this sloth since he came here 3.5, 4 years ago. Prior to that, I have been with this sloth every day, one-on-one. I think I've missed 9 days in 3.5 years. So the sloth knows me very, very well. Now you're about to see the other sloth. The difference between this one and that one, which you'll discuss more with the other one, is that this one was in a static display the first 2 years of his life. So he was never oriented to people. So to get him ready to do his encounters here, it was over a 2-year process. You can make an animal eat from your hand just by not feeding him any other way. That would be mean though. and that would make it in my personal opinion, that would make it a combative thing. I'm keeping his food from him and he's gonna get it from me. But, so the sloth was not treated that way when he came here, so it was more than a year before he decided he was comfortable to eat out of my hand, and it was nearly another year before he was comfortable to eat out of strangers' hands. So this sloth encounter was 2 years in the making, because it's when the sloth is good and ready. And obviously the sloth is entirely comfortable with me, and I'll come up and I'll stand as close to him as this, and he'll rub against me, and you can see videos, he'll like put his hands all in my hair like this, which my hair always looks bad anyway, but he makes it even worse. And but he's never made any move to move onto me, to hang on me. And I won't even like take his hand and make the suggestion. If he wants to move onto me, he will. If he doesn't, that's fine too. The sloths interact with us in the way that they are comfortable to interact. And we're not really going to do anything to change that. The way that they choose to interact with us is the way that they do. So this one has not, to my knowledge, ever been held by a person. If we need to move him, he moves on a branch. And if, you know, one day if he wants to hang on us, he's welcome to. But if he doesn't, that is fine too. So did you guys have questions about this guy before we move on to the next one that I didn't cover today?
You covered a lot. You did?
I spend a lot of time with sloths, and you'll find out as you're around this farm that we genuinely care about all of our animals.
Oh,
And yeah, go ahead.
is there a purpose for his claws being that sharp?
Yeah, so if you look in here in his other environment, like he's got branches of all different diameters in there, right? So when he comes up, you see where that tree makes a turn and goes up right there?
Yeah.
Everything below that, he has to kind of lumberjack it. Everything above that, he can grab one hand. And the pointy end of those claws, when he's on one that is bigger than his hand really closes around, will dig into the bark. So that's how he climbs around in the trees in there. That is a 3-banded armadillo. That's his roommate. That's Baku.
That's cute.
So what's that position he's doing now?
It's so cute.
Say what?
What's that position he's doing now?
Just resting.
Are you just
Now, he has a hammock up there, and he prefers to sleep in his hammock than hanging in a tree. But yeah, sloths in the wild often will sleep like that for long periods of time. But yeah, so the sharpness of the claws is to dig into the branches when he's climbing around, and he can hang by one arm or leg and do one arm pull up.
I got
all the
one
time.
more.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Does he ever go upright?
Yeah, when he goes up and down these branches, he's going upright. Yeah, and if you look at sloth potty time video, you'll see that he's completely up and down with his head pointing up and his hiney pointing down, getting the job done.
It's a long way to travel.
Yeah, he can be completely upside down, completely right side up. He can be crawling down a tree head first. He can be crawling up a tree head first. He can be backing down the tree, hind end first, butt up. He's like a slinky. He can go in any direction, way, shape, or form. So you guys are getting ready to move on to your VIP part of this encounter. We're only going to do 2 at a time. So whichever 2 go first, the other 2 are welcome to hang out and look at camels and kangaroos and such as that. Don't stick your hand into the kangaroo stalls unless you have already used the hand sanitizer outside, because if you have a cat, that can be fatal to a kangaroo. All right, come on out, y'all, and you guys are going to go with Fallon now.
I'm taking
And,
putting my hand in the camera and thing.
If you use hand sanitizer.
Yeah, where is it?
You said
So our cuddle cabin is cozy. All right, if anybody needs a restroom, it is the door that says restroom on, very clever the way we did that. And while you guys are waiting for your turn with Joe, you're welcome to knock around the farm and check out the animal anchors right here. Make sure you get the hand sanitizer. Get this first. You guys are getting ready to go into the sloth pen. If you want to get the hand sanitizer right there before you go in. I gotta get the next breakfast ready. Hey, buddy boy, you want to see some more people? Huh? Hey, for our online audience, if you've been watching us for the last half hour, about to do the same thing we just did again. This sloth only does 2 encounters per day. They do run back to back, but this sloth is a captive bred sloth. He only does 2 encounters per day, so he has a total of 1 hour of work a day. Don't we all wish we had his job? Stay with us for about a hot minute. We're about to start the next time around.
Morning, everybody. We are getting ready to do a sloth encounter. He's kind of chilling right now. This is Flash. He's a 2-toed sloth. Here we go, guys.
So guys, it is sloth weather in here, so if anybody wants to take your jacket, you can hang them right here if you want to, because it is 80 degrees in here and you are likely to get hot. So let me go over the rules of the game just real quick here. And hey Flash, hey baby. So the sloth has horrible vision, so he genuinely cannot see the difference between this and this. So you put this one in his mouth and you do not put this one in his mouth. He has big sharp teeth. He is not looking to bite you, but he genuinely can't see the difference between these two things. Hey Bubba. He's like, oh, I thought we were done. Kind of took a rest between the last two. Hey buddy. You still hungry? Hey buddy.
He's got more self-restraint than me. I'm always hungry.
Hey buddy. We'll let him warm up for another second. So he had no encounters yesterday, and he's like, "Well, what are we doing? Is this?" So his schedule is really set, and he's like, "Well, what are we doing?" So anyway, this is a sloth. You guys are welcome to pet him. He likes to be petted on the back, not on his belly side. He prefers to be stroked like this, like slow and easy. He doesn't like to be scratched like this. He doesn't like you to mess with his belly side, and he doesn't like you to mess with his face. So, but you're welcome to touch him. You're welcome to pet him. Here in a minute, he is going to hang down with us again. You can stand about this close to him, take your pictures, take your videos. You can take all the videos you want, take all the pictures you want. And while we do this, I'm going to teach you some things about sloths that you likely don't know. Let me see if I can wake him up. He's like falling asleep again. Hey, baby boy. Hey, Bubba. Are you awake? Yeah, that is Baku, the armadillo.
He's so tiny.
Hey, Bub. Wake up. This reminds me of the, you guys aren't old enough to have seen the Wiggles, are you? The Wiggles?
Yeah.
Well, I think the purple Wiggle was Chris. Wake up, Chris. I'll call that mine also. Hey, Bubba. Yeah, it's still breakfast time, dude. He's like, oh, I thought breakfast was done. Hey, dude. Good morning, Flash. Hey, baby boy. Light speed for a sloth. Hey, Bubba. Good boy. All right, so this is his breakfast. Here's one for you two. Here's one for you two. You are going to give him all of his breakfast this morning. So this is Flash. Flash is a sloth. Flash is a two-toed sloth. Alive in the world today, there are two-toed sloths and three-toed sloths. There are a few basic differences between them. So the three-toed sloth has 3 on the front feet, obviously. The two-toed has 2 on the front feet. Not everyone knows. They all have 3 toes on the back feet. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. A three-toed sloth has more vertebrae in the cervical spine between its skull and its shoulders. A three-toed sloth has 3 vertebrae of a tail. They have the same number of vertebrae from end to end though. So a two-toed sloth has fewer vertebrae in its cervical spine between its head and its shoulders. So it has more between its hips and its shoulders than a three-toed does. So a three-toed sloth is going to turn its head 270 around like an owl. A two-toed is going to turn his body between hips and shoulders about like a slinky. The two-toed sloth can turn his hips about 180 out from his shoulders. A three-toed sloth cannot. A three-toed sloth is somewhat smaller and somewhat slower than a two-toed sloth. But to describe a two-toed sloth as quicker than any other mammal, you can only be talking about a three-toed sloth because they are the slowest mammals on Earth, the two- and three-toed sloths. So the two-toed is a second place to the slowest, but it's a pretty close second. The sloths are slow. Sloths are famously slow, but sloths are slow in ways you don't think about a sloth being slow. So they're slow not only in their movement, they're slow also in their digestion, their metabolism, their metabolic processes. They are slow in every way that an animal can be slow. So slow in their movement. If you read online, there are very, very contradictory bits of information about exactly how slowly a sloth can move. Some places like to say that a sloth can only move 6 to 8 feet per minute. That's probably true if he's on the ground trying to drag himself across a road, but in the trees they are quicker than that. Some of our online audience thinks that this is the whole environment of the sloth. He has his whole 2-story environment in here, and I personally have seen him go from the very top of that down across to the outside part and back up. So that's about 40 feet, and he can do that in under a minute. So I would say that he could move at least 40 feet per minute, obviously. But still, that's less than 1/2 of 1 mile per hour at his getting it done kind of speed. Oh, you guys are welcome to be each other's photographers too. You can stand, one on each side, and if you, he's like falling asleep mid-bite. Hey, buddy, come down here a second. Hey, come here. He's like, I thought it was a green bean, but it's a squash. He likes his green beans the best. But he'll hang down here in a minute, and you can stand so that his face is right here, and you're here, and you're here, and you get a pretty good picture that way. So sloths are slow. Slow not only in their movement, slow in their digestion. So the first studies on exactly how slowly a sloth digests its food, they put some 3mm glass beads into some sloth's food and waited to see how long it took them to come out the other end. That was between 61 and 64 days. Wow. So that was the beginning theory on how slowly a sloth digests its food. No one seriously believes that anymore. It just seems that glass beads don't move through a sloth the same way the food does. Yeah. The next study on how they did it was using some durable dyes in some individual pieces of food and waiting to see how long the dyes took to come through, and that was more in the 18 days to 30 days range. So sloths primarily are eating leaves. Leaves are almost all cellulose. Cellulose is hard to digest. So the leaves are going to be more towards the 30 days end of that range. If you find some fruit or some veggies or something, that's going to be more towards the 14 or 18 days end of that range. But they digest crazy slowly. Sometimes he falls asleep in the middle of a bite. So sloths even though they digest really slowly, they eat crazy amounts of food. So a sloth eats 10% of its body weight every single day. So that is sort of a ho-hum number until you put it into human perspective. I weigh 180 pounds before I went on vacation last week. So pants are a little tight right now. Don't zoom down, Kevin. So
I have it on wide angle.
oh, well, that's what it's going to take this week, isn't it? Extra wide, extra wide. So yeah, I'm on the wrong hole on the belt still from being on vacation. But anyhow, so based on 180, if I was eating 10% of my body weight every single day, that's me rolling up to Outback and saying, bring me 18 of those 16-ounce porterhouse steaks every single day. That's a crazy amount of food, right? And yet the sloth goes to the bathroom only once in 7 to 10 days, 3 or 4 times a month is all he goes to the bathroom. That's solid and liquid at the same time. He doesn't even tinkle between trips down the tree.
Wow.
When the sloth does go to the bathroom, he is going to eliminate 1/3 of his body weight all at one time. So again, human numbers, I weigh 180, so we're talking about 60 pounds. So that's dropping off a bag of dog food in a 5-gallon bucket all at one shot, right? That would be crazy. But that's what a sloth does. The baby sloth, y'all are going to see up next, currently weighs 8 pounds. Back when she was 6 pounds, I did weigh her one time, you know, the night before she went to the bathroom in the morning after. And she went from 8.4 pounds to 6.3 pounds. So she dropped 2.1 pounds, and that is exactly 1/3 of 6.3. So they are literally dropping 1/3 of their body mass when they go to the bathroom. So crazy, right?
Yeah.
But if they go to the bathroom only once in 10 days and they eat 10% of their body weight, you might think that that would mean he would be actually dropping 100% of his weight when he goes to the bathroom. But that means that he does metabolize and digest his food very thoroughly. So if he's dropping 1/3, that means he's metabolizing 2/3. But in the wild, what he's primarily eating is leaves. And if you guys keep feeding him, he'll wake back up here in a minute. He just is, well, what's your rush? So yeah, sloths don't get in a super big hurry about a whole lot of anything. But and those nails would feel great on me, but not so much on him. He likes to be stroked, not scratched. So I've lost my train. I'm thinking about nails. So anyway, the sloth. What was the last thing I said? I've lost my train of thought. 1/3 of his weight, 1/3 of his body weight. So he's digesting 2/3 of that, but it's really low quality food. It's almost all leaves. Leaves are almost all cellulose. Cellulose is hard to digest and not very nutritious. So they are eating the least nutritious food in the rainforest, so they have the lowest metabolism, lowest energy budget, because they just aren't getting that much nourishment. I mean, hang that for you?
Oh, sure, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So the sloth, his energy budget is really low. That it is so low that a sloth, even though he is technically a warm-blooded animal, can't even maintain his own body temperature. That's why it's so crazy hot in here. In the rainforest, the daytime high is in the mid-80s, the nighttime low is in the high 60s, and his body temperature is going to make this range every single day, from the daytime rainforest high to the daytime low, to the nighttime low every day. So his body temperature is going to change by something. His core body temperature is going to be in the teens of degrees Fahrenheit different from day to night. The sloth so he doesn't have enough energy budget to put in to maintain his body temperature. They also don't have the energy budget to put into nourishing their babies for a long time. So even though the baby will stay with the mother for longer than this, they are only nourishing their babies with milk for 3 to 6 weeks. And that there are, whenever you're reading about sloths, there are very, very contradictory sources of information online. Some of that is by intent and some of that is by not enough research, but 3 to 6 weeks is all that they can all that they can nourish their babies with milk.
Wow.
When I say that some of the information is inaccurate by intent, it's not meaning to be deceptive, it's meaning to help conserve sloths. So when you read that sloths hate to be petted, that it hurts them to be petted, that it interferes with their biome when they're petted, that's entirely true of a wild sloth. or a wild caught sloth. Ours are not wild caught sloths, ours are captive bred sloths, captive bred for multiple generations. So,
Where'd you get
go
them
ahead.
From? Where'd you get them from?
Zoe came from a breeder in Miami, and Flash came from a breeder in Michigan. And the wild caught sloths, they have a whole biome living in their fur, and we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. But it is true with a wild sloth that if you're petting it, it can mess up their biome. So places like the Sloth Conservancy, they just put out as, you know, factual information that you should never ever touch pet a sloth, and they'll say they don't like it, it messes with them. Well, not very many wild animals like to be petted. True fact. Ours are not wild animals, ours are pet animals.
Right.
And in the wild, petting a sloth and messing up their biome, true statement of fact. In captivity, he has no biome living in his fur, his food comes from these dishes. So that's where I say that some of it is intentionally not correct, some of it, or correct for where they are,
Right.
correct for where they are. But we get a lot of haters online that, you know, have read the Sloth Conservancy, and they're like, oh, you should never touch a sloth. Okay, well, you know, they put that out in Costa Rica because they don't want Costa Ricans kidnapping sloths out of the rainforest and having little roadside stands and encouraging tourists to come up and pet a sloth. And you know, in Costa Rica, it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Here, it's not. Anyhow, so the energy budget of the sloth is really low. That impacts their movement, it impacts everything about the way that a sloth lives. The sloth, we said that they only go to the bathroom 3 or 4 times a month, once in a week or 10 days. When he does, he comes all the way down the tree, same side of the tree, and goes to the bathroom in the same exact spot every single time. When he comes all the way down the tree, he gets his hiney right down to the ground and lets it rip right on the ground. The 3-toed sloth takes it even a step further, and he uses the 3 vertebrae he's got of a tail up here, and he gets down and he like digs a little hole in the middle of his poop pile with his little tail. So for the 3-toed sloth, we'll talk about that in a second. So when the reason that they come down the same tree, same side of the tree, and go to the bathroom on the same pile every single time is the sloth-moth symbiotic relationship. So symbiotic means beneficial to both sides of the equation, where parasitic would be beneficial to one side, neutral or harmful to the other side. We all know that. So, but it is symbiotic. So there is a benefit to both sides of the equation. So the benefit to the moth is that the sloth is the living environment of the moths. When the sloth comes down the tree, the moths jump off of the sloth into the waste pile. They lay their eggs in the sloth's waste pile, and the oldest moths will lay there and die. The younger moths will get back on for another trip around. So every time that he comes down the tree to go to the bathroom, there's something going on in his waste pile. So when he comes down now, they lay eggs. When he comes down the next time, those eggs have become larvae. When he comes down the following time, those larvae are now moths. So every time that he comes down, row, row, row your boat, there's something going on with the moths. So that means every time he comes down, new moths are flying up onto the sloth, and they will live their whole life on the sloth.
You don't have moths here?
No, this is in the wild. Yeah, it would be disgusting if
Yeah.
he had
I was
150.
gonna say that's pretty impressive. If they're,
Yeah. Depending what source you believe, there are somewhere between 150 and 600 moths and beetles living in a sloth's fur at any given time.
Wow.
And they are more dense on the 3-toed than they are on the 2-toed, because of the way he gets down there and does the thing with his hiney and his tail digging in the poo. That means that not only the moths can fly up, but the larvae can crawl up his tail, and he can have not only moths but larvae of moths living on him. There is a type of moth called a sloth moth that exists nowhere in the world except in the waste and in the fur of a sloth. So the benefit to the sloth is that's where it's born, that's where it dies. Sorry, the benefit to the moth. Sloth, moth, 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 sloth. I love Dr. Seuss, but not during this. So the benefit to the moth is that the waste pile is where it's born and where it dies, and the sloth is where the moth lives for all its life. The moss and algae that grow in the wild sloth's fur are the food source for the moths. So the only reason that the moth will leave the sloth in its life is to fly to a nearby leaf and drink water that pools up in the leaves and up in the canopy of the rainforest, and to jump off the moth to the sloth to lay their eggs in the waste pile. The benefit to the sloth is that the sloth digests its food at the end of the day by a bacterial process, not by an enzymatic process. So it's got the same chewing like us. Its esophagus is really long. It goes all the way down and around its stomach before it goes into its stomach.
Wow.
And it has a multi-chambered stomach, so the stomach is doing even more to the food than our stomachs do to our food, but he's eating leaves, cellulose. He's got a lot of work to do to make his food digestible. But at the end of the day, our food gets to the point of absorbable by an enzymatic process. His gets to the point of absorbable by a bacterial process. Now, we also have helpful gut bacteria in our guts, and our helpful gut bacteria will last throughout our lives unless we take a long course of antibiotics. That's what would kill our gut bacteria, is antibiotics. If we took antibiotics for a long course, we would need to take probiotics to replenish our gut bacteria, or else you're going to have the trots for a while, right? So you could either have probiotics, or you could have, some Greek yogurt to fix you back up.
Right.
The sloth has no access to Greek yogurt or to probiotics in the rainforest, so his gut bacteria is replenished by the moths. So if you keep feeding him, he'll stay over here with us. Otherwise, he's going to go up in the corner and think he's done and go to sleep. And
He's got one in his
don't
mouth.
worry about the cameras. This is about you, not
Yep.
about the camera. You just walk over there and give him a piece, and he'll come back over here.
He's got one he's working on.
Oh, has he? All right.
Yeah.
So the bacteria is how the sloth digests his food to the point of absorbable. The source of the bacteria is the moths. As he grooms himself, he licks up a certain amount of the moths themselves and a certain amount of the waste of the moths. That is where his helpful gut bacteria comes from. Now in the wild, we don't have to have this sloth that disgusting with moths flying all around him and crawling all in him. And in captivity, he's not ever getting cold. So what kills our gut bacteria is antibiotics. What kills his gut bacteria is being cold. So his environment here is 80 degrees all the time and 50% relative humidity all the time, so he doesn't have his gut bacteria die off the way that a wild sloth does. Now, here in captivity, if his gut bacteria did die, we would be able to tell that because his poop would be dry, hard, falling apart, something like that. And we would fix him up by giving him more fruit. Unless it was an extreme case, then we could give him probiotics, same as we could eat probiotics ourselves. You just have to know what you're doing to keep a sloth around, to keep a sloth alive and happy and healthy. So, slowing their movement, slowing their digestion, slowing their metabolism, slowing their metabolic processes. So the sloth that you're going to see next after this one is Zoe. Zoe is a baby sloth. Zoe's first birthday will be this coming Monday, and that is when she'll be moving down here. She's got her new sloth environment built. There will be a birthday party reveal on that on Monday. But she is a year old now. She weighs 8 pounds. He weighs 15. So she has achieved about 50% of her full adult size in a year. So that is really slow for most mammals to be growing. The sloths in the wild, they say, will live about 20 years, but sloths, of course, are prey animals, not predator animals, so sloths are not going to die of old age in the wild. They're going to die being caught by a jaguar or an eagle or something like that, or a large snake, whatever the case. They're going to die violently in the wild. In captivity, they're going to die of old age, unless you're an idiot and you didn't take care of your sloth, and it's not too hard to kill a sloth if you don't know what you're doing. But in captivity, no one can tell you how old a sloth can get. I can tell you that the two breeders that I know well both have sloths that are female sloths that are over 35 years old and still reproductive. Now, of course, no one can tell you for sure that it's true of a sloth, but it's true of every other mammal I know of, that most female mammals don't reproduce in the last half to third of their lifespan. So if that is true of a sloth, that would seem to indicate they could live at least 70 years, since they're over 35 and still reproductive. But all that anyone can tell you for sure is that there's at least one sloth it is in Germany that's been continuously captive for 51 years and shows no signs of old age. But no one has ever observed a sloth from birth to death of old age. So no one could actually tell you how old a sloth can get in captivity.
How long have people been keeping sloths in captivity?
Well, there's one in China that they say is much older than that, but you know, there's also people in China will tell you that they've got 300-year-old koi. So, you know, we're not really going to base a whole lot on what the Chinese tell us. But the one in Germany, you know, 51 years, they've had one that's been captive for 51 years, and it wasn't born there. It was a wild caught one, so it's older than that, but they've had that one continuously captive for 51 years.
They spray painted some white bears and called them pandas at one of their zoos.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So you gotta take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah. Well, we're not gonna form any close theories on that. You know, whatever. But we try to tell you here what we think and what we know, and you know, what we know is that there's one that's been captive for 51 years, and we think they can get a whole lot older than that, but you know, nobody can tell you for sure.
Yeah.
And but it is true of the vast majority of prey type animals that they're going to live very much longer in captivity than in the wild.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So like in the case of kangaroos, we have kangaroos here, and they're not actually, you wouldn't generally call them prey animals. I mean, dingoes will eat them, but a dingo is no match for an adult male kangaroo. They're gonna wish they hadn't messed with an adult male kangaroo. But what kangaroos die of in the wild is kangaroos. So male kangaroos, the normal family group for reds is like 1 male, 50 females. So if you want to be the one male, 49 have got to go. So they don't live very long in captivity. But in the wild, I'm sorry. They don't live that long in the wild, but in captivity, a male kangaroo can live 20 years.
Really?
And they grow for as long as they are alive. They never stop growing. So in captivity, a male kangaroo can get over 6 feet tall and over 200 pounds. In the wild, they don't get nearly that big because they don't live long enough to get that big. But a male kangaroo grows forever. If it's alive, it's like a tortoise. If it's alive, it's growing. There are exceptions to mammals that live shorter in captivity than they do in the wild, but that is almost all predator animals that tend to live shorter in captivity than they do in the wild. But anyhow, so some physical characteristics of the sloth that we haven't talked about yet. So if you look at his eyes, his eyeballs just have kind of pinpricks right now. He has a situation with his eyes called rod monochromacy, meaning he has all rod cells, no cone cells. So the sloth only has grayscale vision. He doesn't have color vision at all. His daytime vision is worse than his nighttime vision, but even his nighttime vision is terrible. He's working primarily based on sense of smell and sense of hearing. So for better or worse, the sloth knows what I sound like and he knows what I smell like. And I don't ever use any different cologne than the one that I always use, and when I come in the morning I say, "Hey Flash," he knows exactly who it is. And I am this sloth's person. He's been with me nearly every day for the last 4 years. But the difference between this sloth and the one that you see next is the way that they were raised. So this guy was 2 years old when we got him, and he was raised in like a zoo type environment, so he was never held by people. So it would not be natural for this sloth to be held by people. So I will stand all the way up, you know, shoulder to shoulder, nose to nose with him. You can see lots of videos of me, like, you know, just plastered right up against the sloth, and he'll come up and he'll dig his hands all through my hair, and he'll mess with me, and, you know, he'll like lick my face. But the sloth has never made any move to move onto my body, like to hang on me, because it just wouldn't be natural for him. So the baby that you're going to see next has been held every day since she was 2 weeks old. So she is actively seeking human attention all of the time. It's just her natural groove. And you know, if he was wanting to get back in, see the smears on this side, that's where he's like, "Hey, we're done. Let's go take a nap now." So his daily routine is he has 2 sloth encounters per day. That's it. And one at 10, one at 10:30. And after he's done with this encounter, he's 10:30. And after he's done with this encounter, he's going to go climbing up his tree. He's going to crawl into his hammock up there, and he's going to take a nice long. So his dishes are on the other side of that rotating feeder right there. His dinner is free choice. He eats when he wants to.